Let's continue discussing how to value a company. Now, once again, this is finance. Our course is not a course on finance. You don't have to be the expert on valuing a company. If your client is buying or selling a company, your client will have financial advisors. But if you want to be part of the team, and you need to be part of the team, if you want to sit in on these meetings and understand what is being discussed, and the only way that you can protect your client is if you understand what is being discussed, you have to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk and understand the basic concepts of finance. All right, so we have been talking about discounted cash flow, and that's all we're doing is taking the projected future cash flows and discounting them back to present value using the desired rate of return. Remember, we projected cash flows for our company over the next 5 years. We had a terminal value, and then what we did is we took a rate of return. I think we assumed 15%. That's the rate of return we wanted. We took those future cash flows, plugged them into our formula, discounted them back to present value using the 15% rate of return, and we came up with a value of the company of about $876,000. That is discounted cash flow. There are other ways that parties might value a company. Book value. Now, book value is just the balance sheet value. We haven't really talked a lot about the balance sheet yet. Later in the course, we'll do a little unit on accounting so you better understand accounting and financial statements. One of the most important financial statements is the balance sheet. And the balance sheet just lists the company's assets and liabilities and then the owner's equity. So it's assets minus liabilities equals the owner's equity. So the balance sheet value or book value is just the assets minus the liabilities. This is a low valuation. Why is it a low valuation? Well, because it doesn't take into account the future cash flow of the company. So imagine I have a company that has $1 million in assets and $600,000 in liabilities. What is the book value of that company? Well, $1 million in assets minus $600,000 in liabilities, that's a company worth $400,000 book value. But what if I told you that this company had cash flows of $200,000 per year, right? Would you pay only $400,000 for a company that's going to give you a cash flow of $400,000 a year for the next 10 years? No, of course you would pay more. That's why book value, assets minus liabilities, is generally a low valuation because it doesn't take into consideration the cash flow, the future cash flows that the company will have. All right, let's talk about adjusted book value. Adjusted book value is also very similar to the balance sheet value, which is assets minus liabilities, but in this case, you adjust for the actual market value of the assets. Here's the idea. When a company buys an asset, say a company buys an asset for $100,000, it puts it on the balance sheet at $100,000. Now, if the value of the asset goes up a lot or goes down a lot, it doesn't change on the balance sheet. The balance sheet does not change the value of the asset based on the actual market value of the asset. You might say, wow, that's silly. Well, there are lots of reasons why we do it this way. Everybody understands it. So when someone looks at a balance sheet and sees the value of an asset, they understand that that doesn't necessarily reflect the market value of the asset. So when we just talked about book value, we're just taking the asset minus the liabilities as presented on the balance sheet. And we know that the asset as listed on the balance sheet is not the market value of the asset. When we do adjusted book value, we now take the asset and we say, ooh, that asset is listed as $100,000 on the balance sheet. What is its real market value? And then we change that value. And so we'll do assets minus liabilities, with the adjusted book value, but we will adjust the asset value to reflect the actual market value of the asset, which might be either higher or lower than the book value asset of the the book value of the asset. Once again, adjusted book value is a low valuation. Why? Because it also does not take into consideration the possible future cash flows the company will have over the next 2, 5, 10 years. All right, the next value is the liquidation value. And liquidation value is kind of similar to the adjusted book value. The idea of the liquidation value is that if we liquidated this company today, if we dissolved it and liquidated it today, sold off all its assets, turned its assets into cash, and then took that cash, paid off all the company's creditors, how much would we be left over? That is the liquidation value. So the liquidation value just assumes a liquidation. All right, then you'll see valuations based on multiples. So sometimes a company will be worth 4 times its earnings, right? Where did we come up with 4 times its earnings? Whatever research we did indicates that we can just value this company in this shorthand method. It's a shorthand instead of doing the discounted cash flow. It's a lazy method, probably not an advisable method. Sometimes you'll see it, and we just thought we'd mention it. Sometimes you'll have a company that hasn't started making money yet. So you want to invest in this company. You want to value this company. You're going to buy stock in this company. How much you're willing to pay for the stock in this company, or you're going to buy the entire company, it doesn't matter. How much you're going to pay for this company if it hasn't started making money. And therefore, it's very hard to predict the cash flow if the company doesn't have any profits yet. Well, the company might have revenues. So we'll do some sort of multiple, like 3 times annual revenues, to try and value the company. You might say, where did you come up with 3 times annual revenue? Well, I didn't come up with it. The finance people did, so we'll blame it on them. And they came up with that based on their experience valuing other companies. So those are some other valuation methods. As we go later in the semester, later in the course, we'll see discounted cash flow again. We'll also see book value again.